Jupiter. So Jupiter should be demoted to a dwarf planet. So this video is going to be slightly different from all the previous ones I did. The previous ones I've been trying to catch out the AI and I've succeeded every single time. Now in this video I'm trying to use AI here to prove that astronomers are actually really dumb, and their decision in 2006 to demote Pluto from planet to dwarf planet was really stupid, and it was just based on pure politics and just flawed logic. And I really don't know what's going on with these guys. So I began here by asking chatgpt, what is the definition of a planet? A planet is a celestial body that orbits the sun and is not a satellite of a planet. In order to be classified as a planet, a celestial body must also meet several other criteria. Now, it lists 3 criteria, and these 3 all come from the International Astronomical Union. So it's giving me correct information here. Now the order, I think it's slightly wrong, but it doesn't really matter. So let's have a look at these 3 criteria. It must be round or nearly round due to the force of its own gravity. It must have cleared its orbit of other celestial bodies. And then the third one, it must be in orbit around the sun. So in the case of Pluto, Pluto meets criteria 1 and 3. But it doesn't meet number 2 here. It must have cleared its orbit of other celestial bodies. Now the reason for that is Pluto is in the same orbit of some objects in the Kuiper belt. And this definition was just like arbitrarily chosen. And we're about to see how this definition is really, really messed up, because Pluto is not the only planet or dwarf planet that has this issue. So let's have a look. So an astronomer called Alan Stern says, I'm embarrassed for astronomy. Now let's look at this typo here. Astronomy, space.com. He didn't correct his typo, but now why is he embarrassed for astronomy? Well, let's scroll down here. Stern, in charge of the robotic probe on its way to Pluto. Now, I do have to point out that he is biased towards Pluto because he worked on a mission to Pluto. Said the language of the resolution is flawed. It requires that a planet has cleared the neighbourhood around its orbit. But here is where it gets really, really interesting. But Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Neptune all have asteroids as neighbours. So, not only does this definition rule out Pluto as a planet, you also have to rule out Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Neptune out of the definition of planet. If you go by the strict definition that the IAU came up with, you have to take out all these planets. It's patently clear that Earth's zone is not cleared, Stern told Space.com. Jupiter has 50,000 Trojan asteroids, which orbit in lockstep with the planet. So he's saying, going by this definition of cleared its orbit, Jupiter has 50,000 asteroids. So you have to also demote Jupiter to a dwarf planet, which is the height of hilarity given how massive Jupiter is. The king of the planets in our solar system. And by this definition, Jupiter has to be demoted as well. But of course they didn't do that. There was some political ideology, something against Pluto for some reason. Here in the last paragraph I highlighted, Stern called it absurd that only 424 astronomers were allowed to vote out of some 10,000 professional astronomers around the globe. So this vote that took place, they only had like 400 and something voters, and these were the guys who decided to demote Pluto using their new definition that they had just came up with at this conference. But as Stern is pointing out here, all these other planets, including Earth and the biggest one, Jupiter, now don't meet the criteria. So now I'm going back to the AI and I'm going to ask it, has Jupiter cleared its orbit of other celestial bodies? And we get an error. Okay, so this has happened lots of times before. I'm going to reload this and see what happens. I'm going to try this again. Has Jupiter cleared its orbit of other celestial bodies? Okay, so now it's just defining what Jupiter is. Alright, so this is interesting. Jupiter is a gas giant and does not have a solid surface, so it is not capable of attracting and absorbing or ejecting smaller objects in the same way that a terrestrial planet like Earth or Mars can. However, Jupiter does meet the other criteria for classification as a planet. So then it says it's round or nearly round and it orbits the sun. So it does meet 2 out of the 3, but it's admitting here that it cannot absorb or eject small objects, which I think that's definitely not true. So it is kind of admitting that it doesn't meet the criteria that it has cleared its orbit. Now, how it explains it is not correct. And down here it says, it is thought to have helped to clear its orbit of smaller celestial bodies by gravitationally attracting and ejecting them from the solar system, or by pulling them into stable orbits around itself. In this sense, Jupiter can be considered to have cleared its orbit, in the same way that other planets. So, Chat AI here is contradicting itself. It is saying that it's pulled other objects into stable orbits around itself, and then it's saying it's cleared its orbit. So now I'm going to ask about Earth. Has Earth cleared its orbit of other celestial bodies? Yes, to a large extent. Wait a minute, so what do you mean by to a large extent? Has it actually done it fully? Or are you saying, okay, so it's answering here, Earth's orbit is not completely free of debris. Here we go. The solar system is filled with small objects such as asteroids and comets, and some of these objects do pass through Earth's orbit from time to time. So it is admitting for Earth that it is not completely free of debris, but up here it's saying Earth has cleared its orbit of other celestial bodies to a large extent. To a large extent. It's not saying it's fully done it, and it is admitting down here it's not completely free of debris. So obvious question here, so does Earth meet the criteria of a planet? Yes, it does. It meets all the criteria, it says. So it's saying it's round, and it's claiming it has cleared the orbit of other celestial bodies, and it uses the same phrase here, to a large extent. So it's trying to side with the astronomers, the anti-Pluto astronomers, I like to call them. But it does admit that Earth has not cleared its orbit up here. Alright, I'm just going to jump back to Jupiter again here. Doesn't Jupiter have about 50,000 asteroids in its orbit? Remember, that's what Alan Stern said. Jupiter does have a large number of asteroids in its orbit, but the number of asteroids in its orbit is not as high as 50,000. And now it's giving some numbers here. 6,000 asteroids. So it's not as high as 50,000. So doesn't this mean Jupiter has not cleared its orbit of other celestial bodies? Which is one of the definitions. Then the total number of asteroids in Jupiter's orbit is relatively small compared to the number of asteroids in the solar system. Okay, what has that got to do with my question? Nothing. And the orbits of other planets in the solar system are relatively free of debris compared to Jupiter's orbit. For these reasons, Jupiter is still considered to have cleared its orbit of other celestial bodies and is classified as a planet. So it's trying to say that because it's not a large amount, that it's still a planet, but it doesn't fit the definition. Even if there's a small amount, relatively speaking, like it's saying 6,000, which is a pretty large number as far as I'm concerned, it's saying that it's still classified as a planet. Here we can see how AI is actually showing us how bad this definition is, and that these astronomers just ran with it. So now I'm going to ask about Mars. Does Mars have celestial bodies in its orbit? Mars does not have any celestial bodies in orbit around it. So it is saying no. So this is contradicting what Stern here, says here. Earth, Mars, Jupiter and Neptune all have asteroids as neighbours. So I don't know. Who do you believe? Alan Stern, this astronomer, or the AI? Okay, so I'm going to jump back up to one of the previous answers here, and I'll end this video here because this really hits home what's going on. There are 2 groups of Trojan asteroids, one in front of and one behind Jupiter in its orbit. And each group contains about 6,000 asteroids. So here is proof positive that Jupiter has at least 12,000 asteroids. So 6,000 in each group of 2. One in front of Jupiter's orbit and one behind. So these are literally in Jupiter's orbit. And they've been like trapped in the orbit like through Jupiter's gravity or whatever. This clearly shows you that Jupiter, by their definition, does not meet the criteria of a fully fledged planet, and therefore Jupiter so Jupiter should be demoted to a dwarf planet. This is what the astronomers say themselves, and yet they ignore this. Okay guys, I'm going to end the video here. Please subscribe, please like, and if you have any suggestions on subjects you want me to talk about with the AI, let me know in the comments. So until next time, see you all later.